We begin with the retail industry, and it wasn't pretty, guys. General retailers, including Macy's, JCPenney, and Kohl's, all getting hit this week after weak earnings reports. And it wasn't any better with apparel retailers, both Nordstrom and The Gap falling more than 15% each after similarly weak quarterly reports. There's a lot to get to here, Ron, but when you look at the retail landscape, what strikes you first?
That there's absolutely no bright spot here.
Wow. None?
There was no bright spot. Occam's razor tells you that the simplest explanation is probably the right one. I have to move to Amazon for that. Eating everyone's lunch, including the apparel retailers, as you mentioned. April looks like it may be looking up, but first quarter, holiday season, discounting, promotions, store traffic, size of average cart size, just all really weak. It leads me to scratch my head a bit because you say, okay, unemployment's decent, gas prices are fine. Why aren't people spending? Interest rates are low. What's going on here? Again, I come back to Occam's razor and Amazon.
Well, Jason, when you look particularly at the general retailers, one narrative there has to be what we've seen over the past decade with mall traffic, because Macy's, JCPenney, Kohl's, they are all pretty heavily dependent on malls.
Absolutely, and I think with the Macy's report was quite underwhelming. And I think the interesting thing about Macy's is you go to a mall, you probably don't even intend to go to a Macy's, and you end up there for some reason or another. So I think it's definitely a testament to the fact that mall traffic is down. I think when you look at JCPenney, I think the current economic climate still very much favors JCPenney's clientele, right? That moderate to mid-tier consumer that they're looking for. So the fact that JCPenney is struggling, it really leads you to believe there's a consumer out there right now that doesn't necessarily feel as confident, perhaps. Granted, the unemployment picture looks better. I can't help but think that maybe we're in a situation where we have some sort of underemployment. I don't think wages are really all that robust. I mean, we know that the typical consumer savings rate is very low. So if they're spending, they're kind of having to spend either out of that paycheck or on credit. And I think people are a little bit maybe hesitant to do that.
Yeah, last time we saw a real weakness in retail, we often talked about a bifurcation of the consumer. There was the high end and there was the low end, and the higher end consumer was still spending. In this case, no matter where you look, we seem to see the same type of weakness, maybe to different extents, but still weak across the board. And that's what's interesting to me about this time around.
Well, and Simon, we saw e-commerce in general looking better with the year-over-year numbers for April up just more than 10%. So whereas sort of store-based retail is flat or maybe up slightly, you look at non-store retail sales, and those are doing just fine.
The bright spot, right, Ron? The one bright spot of it is that it's going to e-commerce right now. You look at the 1,000 largest retailers in North America last year. Web sales were up 15% actually, compared to only 3% on the stores. So it's just a transition, perhaps, that people are spending money in different ways. And I think that there's a lot of companies that are actually doing that transition pretty well, positioning themselves well on the web and still getting a lot of sales out of that too.
Yeah, Wayfair is a good example beyond Amazon. I mean, let's not credit Amazon with everything here. I mean, there are other businesses in the world. I think Wayfair is one that I certainly understand, or understood at least, initial skepticism in buying your furniture online, sort of sight unseen, or at least not having quite the idea of how maybe it fits in your home. But the numbers that Wayfair continues to turn in tell us that these guys are doing something right. I mean, you look at sales for the quarter. The earnings just came out. Sales grew almost 93%. Repeat customers, which is really a key to their business model, repeat customers placing better than 55% of total orders, and their active customer base is up almost 70% to 6.1 million customers now. I mean, they're doing the same kinds of things that Amazon does, and really just making sure they focus on the consumer, focus on having that inventory in hand, make a returns policy very simple, and get it to the customer with free shipping in a pretty quick order. Those are the kinds of businesses that I think are going to be really separating themselves here in the coming years, the ones that are very customer-centric and taking advantage of that online channel.
Yeah, and I'll wrap by saying maybe we can have some optimism with respect to the second quarter. Retail sales in April were up 1.3%. Auto dealers and online were really the bulk of that, so it's a little bit kind of specific where we see the strength. Home sales were the weakest, mostly because of the weather we've been experiencing. But perhaps second quarter will look a bit better.
I wonder how much of that we would credit to tax refunds. I don't know. I mean, I unfortunately can't speak from the perspective of getting a refund. Thanks a lot, Uncle Sam. But some people did, and I think that probably there was a little boost to spending from that.
I agree with Jason. You've got to have a niche in retail today. You're not going to compete with Amazon in things like everyday items or media or electronics or even groceries and stuff like that now. You've got to have a certain niche carved out. I really like Lululemon in the space. Saw great growth in direct-to-consumer, the online channel, and they've got something that they've kind of protected. You've got to do something like that for retail to survive.
Ron, I don't want to pick on Nordstrom, but
well, let's do it.
But I was genuinely surprised by their report because they were sort of in the same boat as all these other companies we've been talking about here. And historically, I mean, that is a retailer that is known for, among other things, really great customer service. Yep. I'm just wondering if this was just sort of a speed bump for them.
So what's interesting is if you look at the segments, their online and their discount segment did quite well. Their main typical stores did not, which is bad news for them. They typically use the online and the discount stores as kind of a way to drive people into the bigger stores over time. So it's not a good sign to see that. But I still do believe they're probably the best out there with respect to customer service, and I do like the merchandise they put into the store. Hopefully this is a blip, but time and time again we've seen that retail is a really tough business.